How are you? My name is Karen.
Hi, Karen. I'm Annette. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. How long have you been a mediator with community boards?
Let's see. I began in March of 2016. How about you?
I started about the beginning of 2014. I took the basics and I just loved it, and I found a home here, and I'm so happy doing this. I just love that. So I'm going to just check in and ask about your day. How's it been going? How you feeling? You ready for mediation?
I had a rough ride over here on BART. Two men on my car got into a fight.
Really? Wow.
It got really physical really quickly, and ultimately they were arrested by the police. But what was amazing to me, 3 people intervened, and they were all women, and they were older women.
Was that scary for you?
It was really upsetting. So I'm really glad we get to do the check-in. I think it's a really important part of the mediation because it takes a little time to get present, breathe, So I'm glad we get to do that.
And I have to say, my day was, I had a hectic day at work, but my experience on BART was totally the opposite of yours. Because I had a busy day, but then I took a long BART ride out here, and I'm reading a book by Billy Crystal, and I just love Billy Crystal. He makes me laugh, and he just says the funniest things. And so when I'm sitting on the bus, sometimes I just break out laughing, and I'm thinking, oh my God, everybody's staring at me. But it brings a big guffaw, and I wish I could think of some of the things he said, like when he's talking about making city slicker or something. But anyway, I just love Billy Crystal. So you ready to dig in?
Yes, let's dig in.
So in our panel brief packet, we've got, among other things, the briefing mediation checklist and a sample script. And the sample script is, if you're not familiar with these, are just sort of a guideline. You don't have to read them word for word, but we use it because so you don't have to memorize things, but you want to get the key points, And the briefing checklist, I find that in my experience, the briefing is really almost one of the most important parts because, if you take your time and do this, it can avoid other problems that might arise during the mediation, or so you know how to handle things,
I also saw the agreement in here, the confidentiality agreement, and
the resolution.
The resolution.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll figure out
who's
going to do
what
what
They do such a good
parts.
job at community boards preparing for us.
Yeah,
really
whoever
great.
puts these packets together does a great job. Anyway, so we don't have to go through every one of these, but one of these that's kind of important to me is sharing my mediation style.
Okay.
And I just want to share this with you because I have a tendency to what we call step out, if you remember that from the basics, where you kind of, for lack of a better word, run over other people and you kind of hijack the mediation. So I have a tendency, it's not the intent, but it's the impact. So I have a tendency to step out sometimes too much. I'll be asking a party the question, and then I kind of get on this roll, and it doesn't help me if you go, or, I really give you permission, and I want you to say something like, hey, Karen, would it be okay if I asked a question about whatever it is? And then it'll let me know, it'll kind of snap me out of it, that I'll know that, oh, okay, what she's saying is, I give you my full permission to do that. Are you?
All right, I can do that.
It will really help me, because I don't mean to do that, but it happens sometimes.
Okay,
so.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing.
Thank you. So, Annette, is there anything you'd like to share with me about your style?
Yes, thanks. So when we feel, either one of us, that things are going a little wobbly, I would like to have a nonverbal signal.
Okay.
And if you give me a nonverbal signal for let's take a break, I can then say something to that effect. If I think it's critical that we just keep continuing, I'll ignore the signal, and I'm inviting you to do the same thing.
Okay, so this is interesting because generally speaking, when I mediate, if any mediator wants to call a break, it's like a no questions asked kind of thing.
Okay.
Because, and the only reason I say that is because I trust that you wouldn't call a break if it wasn't something important. So if you say to me, we need, Karen, would it be okay if we take a break? I would just say, fine, let's stop right here. So that would be my preference if you're okay with that.
I'm
Because like
fine
I
with
said,
that.
I'm going to trust that if you feel anything is wonky, that you'll just say, Karen, would it be okay if we take a break here? And if we're in the middle of the sentence, we'll say sure, and then we'll just, is that okay with you?
That's fine.
Because I think that's really important, that if something is going wrong, that we feel that we can take a break.
Okay. And we invite them to do the same.
Right, yes,
Okay.
we do.
All right.
But ours is more to discuss the issues, and theirs is kind of like if they need to get
Use
some
the
relief or
restroom.
something. Yeah, use the restroom. Right. Is there anything else about you that you think I should know?
Anything else about me?
I mean, in terms of the your mediation
I get
style.
it.
Yeah.
I tend to ask a lot of questions
Okay.
for clarification.
Okay.
And also to create some space for them to really express what's going on emotionally. So my
Okay.
questions tend to reflect the emotional content,
Okay,
because
good.
I find that people are telling me the story, this happened, she did, he did,
Mhm.
and I think it's really important to invite the feelings into the space.
Okay, I agree. I think that's great. And I'm just going to kind of go down this list here. So, so the whiteboard. I mean, some people, mediators, are comfortable putting things up on the whiteboard. I mean, I'm not necessarily a whiteboard person unless things get, I need to make things clear. But if you want to go to the whiteboard, please feel free to do that. It doesn't bother me at all.
I think when we get to the concerns, I
Okay.
like to list the
Oh,
concerns
okay.
so both parties see the concerns, and then I get to check whether the language
Mm-hmm.
matches their intention.
Okay, good. All right. And in terms of the resolution, I happen to be a very fast typist. So if you're
All
okay,
yours.
okay,
All yours.
All right, and they
you
have
take
it,
that.
and there is a resolution form on the computer, so we can just type it right in there. It's not. And then what I generally do is print out copies and let the parties read it, see if they'd like it, and just make changes if needs be.
Great.
Let's see. Oh, right. So this is something we kind of talked about, like strategies to use if we find each other in disagreement, confused, or whatever. I think we're on par that if something is wonky, we say why don't we take a break, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. And I wanted to ask you. This comes up sometimes. Some mediators like to take breaks at prearranged times. Like I'm personally not that way.
Me either.
Oh, okay.
It's not my
Okay.
preference.
Okay, good. Okay. And then the other thing that came up for me at a mediation once was that as we were nearing the third hour, and I've handled this different ways, but like maybe at about 15 minutes, sometimes once I was doing a mediation, I felt that it was important for me to sort of mark the time, and another mediator got really mad at me because I had interrupted the flow of something and really sort of took me to task after the mediation. So I was wondering, do you have thoughts about like marking or letting people know as and I'm pointing there because the clock's up there, that do you want to mark time in some way, or are you?
I don't think marking time is my preference.
Okay, good.
However,
Mhm.
I think if we don't feel like we're progressing,
Mhm.
I think it's useful to say we have a half hour left.
Okay.
So sometimes that will encourage the disputants to get on with the process.
Okay.
But just telling them, just marking the time,
okay.
I don't feel is useful.
Okay, that makes sense. So I wanted to ask you how you feel about going overtime. Sometimes mediations go a little bit over time. We don't want to pressure people to come to a resolution. I'm okay staying over if you are and the others are, as long as we're all in agreement. How do you feel about that?
Today I can stay over up to a half hour, so I can go to the 3.5 hour mark,
Okay.
because we also have our debrief.
Okay, perfect.
So
Okay.
that's what I can do today. So how do you deal with anger? Because I've worked with mediators who have a bit of an issue when disputants get really, really angry. How's it for you?
I don't do well with it, and I need help because when people are angry, I think my tendency is to just sort of pull away and not say anything, I kind of get, I don't want to say it's scared, but I don't do what like we were taught, meet emotion with emotion, but that doesn't work that way for me.
So how can I support you in that?
Well, if somebody does get angry, if you're okay taking the lead, and maybe I can sort of follow your example on that and learn how to deal with it a little bit better, because I'd really like to learn how to deal with anger better.
Great. I don't have a problem, so I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and if it just gets too much, I'll ask to take a break. Thank you.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Sounds great. So Karen, I like to use silence during the mediation. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not greatly comfortable with silence, but I want to support you in how you use silence. So maybe is there a cue, or will you say something that I'll know?
I'm glad you asked. So what I will say to the participants is the signal that you'll also hear. And I think it's really important that if I'm the one calling for silence, that I be the one to bring us out of silence.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Yes, absolutely.
And you can draw or take notes or whatever you need to do during that time. I recommend breathing.
Okay, I'll try to remember to breathe. Okay, thank you for talking about that.
All right. And we should go into who's going to do what.
Yeah.
All right. So,
On the other side here.
do you have a preference?
No,
No
I
preference.
have no preference.
So, are you comfortable welcoming and doing the
Yes,
introductions?
Absolutely. I'm comfortable with any part of this. We can just go back and forth, whatever you want.
Okay. Well, how about if you do the first two? And then I'll come in explaining our roles, and I'll also explain the 3-step process.
Okay.
And maybe you can set the guidelines.
Okay. Can I? So you want to? Okay. So I'll do the welcome and explaining the confidentiality agreement.
Great.
Okay. Is that okay? All right. Okay. And then you'll do the role of mediators in the
Yes.
process. Okay. And what did you about the guidelines? You want me to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I can do the housekeeping, let
Sure.
them know where the bathrooms are and phones off, and
Okay.
make sure that their parking situation and all that works. So Karen, will you be comfortable doing the transition to phase 1?
Absolutely. And what I like to do transition to phase 1 is to ask each party for their goal in coming here, because I like to hear whether they're sort of on the same page or whether they're totally at odds. And I also like to ask for the very brief statement, 2 minutes to give a brief statement of what is bringing them here and what the impact is. And I don't have any problem interrupting somebody if they go past those 2 minutes, because I think it's really important to that it doesn't take too long, so that each person isn't just hanging out there. And I always remind them when I interrupt them that they'll have plenty of time to air their concerns and make more comments later on. So, and are you okay with that?
Oh, that's great. We're on the same page.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. And how about transition to phase 2? Are you okay doing that?
I'm happy to do that, and I like to use the whiteboard. I want to be sure that the language I capture they are comfortable with, so we can see it together.
Okay, I like that. Okay, and you're going to move. You're going to move into phase 2. So what about? Are you okay also doing the transition to phase 3?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll
all
do
right.
that. And you then will be doing the closing.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I like to do the closing, kind of like that part, thank the parties for coming. And I like actually the part about talking to the parties about donations, because I like to explain to them, I know a lot of people aren't comfortable, but I like to explain to them the importance of community boards, and that we're a nonprofit, and that we offer our services at low, and we don't cost and don't turn anybody away for funds, and we also want them to become a part of our community. So I like to really make that statement really strong. So
well, I'm going to learn from you, because I have to confess this is not a part I'm particularly comfortable with. And in learning from you, let's be sure that we come back to it in the debrief,
Yeah.
so that I can tell you what it is
Mm-hmm.
that I got, or what's still challenging, or ask for support around it.
And I'm glad you said that, because I have two things on me to talk with you about to get more comfortable with silence and when people are angry. So we can learn from each other, I hope.
Yeah, that's what makes the debrief really important.
Yeah. So are you ready to go out and get the parties?
I am.
All right, here we go.